Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Julianne Hunter. Hi, Julianne. How are you?
Hi, Craig. I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Looking forward to today. And of course, once I went to go find your images, it stopped working. Hold on for a second. I was very excited today because, as I had just mentioned, it's been a while since I've had a printmaker on. So I love prints. So I wanted to start with this one, right? So
Yeah.
I'm sure you're probably a little surprised that I picked this based on all the stuff that you have, but I really love this print. So
Oh,
my first question is this a screen print with an etching?
no.
What's the background? It's a photo something. Is it a litho?
No.
What
It's
is
um,
it?
it's a photopolymer plate etching with a little zinc plate etching
Okay.
up. And
You got
I
me there because I was looking for the edge around that outer thing and I couldn't see it. So Um, you
like
got
the
me.
great,
So,
awesome.
so I love the idea that you have these two items together, but they still relate. They're still talking about the same thing.
Mhm.
I'm assuming with this, the emphasis on the lock or the mechanism on this, there's got to be a story behind this that I just don't know about.
Yeah. So th this is like actually such a great place to start because this is when I was kind of figuring out what this body of work was about. So, this is a gate at the childhood house that I grew up in, which has now been totally demolished and is just a hole in the ground that went up for auction recently. But this is like me going back and taking photographs of the actual house, while it was like condemned, and then using those photographs to kind of recreate and re kind of show the house in a new light. So the polymer plates, I learned photopolymer plate etching from Nancy Diesner at ZMA's printmaking and just really fell in love with the rich quality that you could get. And I also love to play with like the temperature of blacks. So this is like a warm black with a brown.
Hmm?
Um, yeah, and then the etched plate is a little zinc plate. And that's kind of the drawn image of the lock that actually was on the gate at some point, but they that had been kind of disrupted and probably was broken and rusted. So I was playing with the idea of like the actual thing and then the memory of the thing. So
Hmm.
it was one way that I was starting to put those two things together.
That makes sense with the actual photograph and the invented part. Okay, I'm with you now. I got it. It's a lovely little piece. And I see that this one in particular is edition. Do you
Yes.
edition the majority of your work?
Um, Nowadays, no, I
Hmm.
don't edition many works at all, but my
Okay.
students would be calling me like such a hypocrite right now because I make them edition everything.
Well, it's good for them because they need the practice, but
Yeah.
you're already there. I do
And
the same
again,
thing. I robbed printmaking of that great
yeah,
device.
yeah. And I was learning at this point still, like trying to put two different things together, and those polymer plates can be a bit finicky. And I was trying to send things through the press at the same time here.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, that was quite a bit to figure out. So I was learning. So in my own defense, making 24 really taught me how to do this.
Uh-huh. I get it. Let's see. Let's go to the next one. So I found this guy. I just fell in love with this image. But I need to know this is the process behind this. It seems very detailed. I was coming into this in several different ways, thinking about handmade papers or
Mhm.
printmaking or this or that. So please enlighten me.
Yeah, so this is handmade paper. It's not handmade by me. Um
Hmm.
I came from a sculpture background and have always loved paper, but really didn't know the subtleties of handmade paper at this point. But there used to be this great art store in New York Central, Art Supplies in New
Hmm.
York. And I, in the beginning of graduate school, was still commuting back and forth from New York up to New Paltz. And so I would cruise by there and stop in and like get a bunch of random papers. So a
Hmm.
lot of these, maybe all of these are from New York Central Art Supply.
Okay.
Um, and So they are like, looks like the top one looks kind of like a fiber paper, like a canaf maybe, or
Hmm.
sisal, or something like that. But they're super, super thin, but they're
Hmm.
also super, super strong. And
Hmm.
these were able to be run through the press multiple times. I'm using a Kua water-based ink for this,
Hmm.
and was able to put the great thing about them and the horrible thing about them is they never dry. So
Right.
it was a really great process of putting the ink in these little like squeeze bottles with these
Uh-huh.
thin tips. And I made this in residency also at ZMA's. And I was able to kind of draw directly onto the plexiglass on the tackage plate in this really meditative way to make
Hmm.
squares. And then you had as long as you wanted to make them. And then I'd lay the paper right down on top of the print and run the whole thing through the press.
Hmm.
So there's several different layers for sure, but then this is all also collaged on top of itself and then kind of shinkolayed together through a final run through the press. So I would say
You
it's like ghost and layers and has probably been through the press at least 10 times.
usually often interested in the content of the imagery, but on this particular piece, I realized I needed to know the process because that it helps inform the final version. So one more stupid little technical. Are you backing these with anything? Are you adhering them to like a no? They're just floating. Okay.
They're adhered to each other, so they're like super paper thin, like
Okay.
so, so thin, but really strong.
Okay. And then these, as much as I'm showing these, I really want to be in the room with these, right? Because I can imagine that the light just makes them kind of come alive. Because there is a texture to these, correct?
Super textured. Yeah.
Textured. So, what is this part of a series that you did?
Yeah, so I was doing the Khan Fellowship at this time at the Ink Shop here in Ithaca, which is a year-long fellowship that we do there. And I was working in 2021, I believe, on the 2021. And so my whole proposal and idea for this body of work was how we are always making with other people, even if you're the only person in the room, especially within the confines of a print shop, because everyone else's dirt and mistakes and history lives in that room and has been on
Okay.
that press. And I'm really a believer in like ghosts and energy and like
Okay.
the residue of someone else's action or attitude or the physical ink that they've left behind is always going to impact you.
Uh-huh. Is that where the color is coming from?
So the colors are these watercolor monotypes, but
Okay.
embedded within those are also like pencil shavings from the
Okay.
watercolor pencil that I used.
So you're embracing the happy accident. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes. Yeah. And like seeing what sticks, seeing what doesn't stick, but the texture actually is I made this whole series of work that um I call floor mat monotypes. And so
Uh-huh. Nice.
use the floor mat from the studio as the texture, but along with that is everyone's dirt. So everyone that has ever stepped on that floor mat has contributed to this print. And so that was a way for me to like show that I'm working in a community with other
Yeah.
printmakers, even though we're not physically in the same room with each other. So by this time, it's been through the press so many times that there's not a
Right.
ton of dirt on these ones.
Right.
But there's still some, if you can see them in person, there's still some residue left.
Well, you had mentioned I read on your site that you had this interest in deterioration about
Mhm.
things that you know look like they're deteriorated. Are you is that something that's active through all series that you're doing, or was that just sort of a one-off idea? Is it
I would
is it
say that
prevalent?
I would say that I am always, always thinking about that. Like
Okay, all
that
right.
came
So
from
that
some,
leads me to my other question, which is, are if you are interested in that, making works that look deteriorated, are you trying to make the work look deteriorated, or are you doing processes to take work to deteriorate it over time?
I am always trying to do both.
Okay, all right. That's a great answer. Perfect. That works out.
Yeah.
So so speaking of doing both, I saw this piece, and for those people watching, I'm going to zoom in here because I think this is the detail that I think when I first saw it, I just went right by. And I was like, wait, let me take another look. So this is these are these etchings on plexi?
No, these are etchings on copper.
So how are you cutting the plates to get those little notches? Is that are you using files to get into those notches or
Yeah, I'm using like a coping saw, like a jeweler's saw,
okay.
and lots of files and jump saws and whatever I can get my hands on.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. So the structure itself, the drawing itself,
Mhm.
is this a known location or is it invented?
Yeah, this is a known location. So this whole series starts with a photograph. And
Mm-hmm.
the photograph is printed on Xerox paper, like on a copy machine. And then on the copper plate, I heat that up super hot and then kiss the Xerox to the copper
Okay.
plate and kind of burnish it in with a wooden spoon. And that heat melts the toner onto the copper plate. So that's where it starts. But
Nice
then these
process.
have been through like at least 10 states from that initial process. And so I'm adding line etching, I'm adding aquatint, I'm adding a lot of scraping and burnishing. So I'm trying to land somewhere in the middle of like a photographic representation and a sketch and a memory
Well,
of this.
that's successful. You land on that. So, and these aren't additioned, obviously. These are the one-offs.
These are
Mono.
super, super limited edition. So this is
Okay.
an edition of four, kind of. So if
Yeah.
I was talking to a printmaker, I don't know that I would call them an edition per se. Like the prints themselves are registered. They're of the same tonal value. They have the same wiping, but the paper here is handmade paper with abaca and cotton. But for
Right.
each, there's four in this series, and each of these prints, like all that stuff, the
Right.
inclusions
It's all
in
different.
paper is actually this location. I went up to this location and I had a Ziploc baggie and I picked some stuff off the side of this building so that
Okay.
that first window on the corner is where all that stuff came from. So it's like wood and leaves and like
So
peeled
these are
paint.
monotypes.
Well, no, they're an addition of etchings, but the paper is
The
unique
paper's different. Right.
one. So the
Okay.
paper is a little different, but the inclusions from this location are embedded within the paper that is then the illustration or the drawing or the etching of the place. So it's kind of archiving these buildings that were falling down because I had a commute that I would pass these all the time and kind of just watching them like
Hmm.
fall and one day a window's broken or they became these like ghostly but kind of comforting places for
Hmm.
me. Wanted to archive them somehow.
So when you do something like this, because you have others in this, I guess, series,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? Um, do you do you ever put the series to bed or do you sometimes go back and revive them?
So far, I finished them and then that's
That's
it.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a dumb question, but I just had to ask. So I almost showed this piece first. I think this is probably my favorite piece of yours.
Yeah.
I'm really digging this piece, and it's
Oh,
not big, right?
no, it's about
It's
like 10 by 10, maybe 12 by 12.
so it's printed. What's the material that it's printed on? What is that fibrous material?
Yeah, so these are, printmakers, we want things to be like specific. And so you tear off the edges of paper.
Uh-huh.
And so I saved all the tear offs
Oh,
of
I
all
see.
my own and everyone else's paper. And then I
Uh-huh.
glued them together to make this paper stack. And
Okay.
then I run those stacks through the bandsaw once the glue has dried. So this is kind of a cross section of that paper sculpture.
Hmm.
Um,
Because
yeah,
they
so
really have a dimensional quality to them,
yeah.
which I really like. And I assume you probably frame these out in box frames, or do you frame them at all? Do you just hang them?
So these are mounted on MDF panels and they're kind
Uh,
of set up on the surface of nails.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that they come off. That's where the shadow gets created from that. So my first installation of these was at the Samuel Dorsey Museum of Art for my MFA thesis, and they do not let you hang on the walls there. So I came up with this MDF panel and kind of made these different collages of them. But then I wanted to show them after grad school, and they were 48 by 48, and they were impossible to ship. They're really fragile and a big clump.
Mm-hmm.
So I made all individual mounting systems for them so that I can ship them around. So
Mm.
they're now individual.
This piece is fantastic, and it's got my vote. If you ever do a catalog of your works, this should be the cover. Right? I really love this piece.
This was the
Uh,
cover for my thesis postcard.
okay,
I
all
really love
right,
it.
that's good. That's really good. So I have one final piece, and this is a larger version of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you about the imagery that you've printed on this because a lot of times your other imagery is decipherable, but this is almost indecipherable.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, sure, as soon as you tell me what it is, it'll snap in, but I'm still lost on this. Does it
Yeah.
matter that people can understand the imagery or not?
That's a great question. Um, so I tend to prefer to show bodies of work. And so if you can't quite figure it out from one piece, the imagery is probably repeated somewhere else.
Okay.
So I hope that in my shows where I have more than one piece, I hope that it is decipherable because there's little kind of clues somewhere, and then it
Mm-hmm.
might be more or less clear on a different piece, and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe start to put things together. Um,
Well, for
so
me, it that's not what's interesting. To me, it's the edge, right? That
yes,
edge is just so
yeah,
fascinating. I
I
could just
love the edge also. Yeah,
absorb that all day. Just a picture about edges. It's just
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
wonderful in itself.
Which is actually how this whole, like, I would say that is kind of the basis for all of my work is about the edge of the paper because when we think about paper, we think about the like the front side that you can write on, the back side
Right.
that you can write on, but actually the edge of the paper that can cut you, that can give you a paper cut, like that is such an important edge that we don't even think about because we can barely see it, but it's such
Right.
a powerful thing. And when you get a collective amount of edges, like so many edges together, you have this new surface that's
Right.
created.
Well, I
Um,
think it's interesting as a printmaker
mhm.
who's, printmakers are so associated with the image.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating that you're not making images, you're making objects.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that to me is like, okay, that's using printmaking to create something else. I really find that fascinating. I don't think enough printmakers do that.
Oh,
So I want to start our other conversation with just
mhm.
a real quick question. Is your studio in your house or is it out located somewhere else?
I I don't really have a studio per se.
Okay.
I do teach at Cornell University and Ithaca College, so I use those studios a lot, and
So
I would call those my studios.
that's where your presses are.
That's where presses are. Yeah,
Okay. Do you own
have
a press yourself?
I do. I own two Fuchs and
Okay.
Lang litho presses.
Okay.
But I'm like so grateful that I have these other studios available
Huh.
because they're set up. I have everything I need. There's ventilation and light and other people around. So someday I hope to have my own studio with proper presses.
Okay. But
Like
you
super.
have two, are your two presses in the garage right now waiting for you?
One is in my grandma's garage with my paper maker, and then the other one is at my friend Amy's house in her basement.
Well, I wish you luck. They
Thank
need to be
you.
used, otherwise they get all rusty.
Yeah.
So a question I wanted to ask you, I ask a lot of artists, do you have a memory of a first time you were exposed to art? Something maybe when you were a little kid that stuck in your head?
I mean, I don't, well, yes, I grew up in Hudson, New York. And
Okay.
so I learned to go fishing at Frederick Church's house, Olana, at the heart-shaped pond that he made. So
Okay.
me and my dad would go to Olana all the time, but we've never went inside. So I didn't go inside actually until I think I was in college. Um, so I remember being near Olana, but we just called it the castle. Like I want to go to the castle. And
Okay.
that was in my backyard pretty much. So
Fantastic.
I would say that's probably my first art experience. But since I was young, like I either wanted to be a zookeeper or a lifeguard or an art teacher.
Of
And the
course.
art teacher is the one that won out. Like
So speed me up a little bit. At did you end up going to school for art?
I did, yeah. I actually have
Okay.
a BFA in sculpture from the College
Okay.
of St. Rose. And
Did you
then
did you know at that point that you wanted to be an artist?
I still thought I wanted to teach middle school or high school because I'm a first gen college kid and no one really talked to me about what a career could be. But then I went to Italy and did my summer semester abroad in Florence and did marble sculpture. And when I got back from that experience, I was like, oh, I'm not going to be a teacher. Like I'm an artist. And that's,
I love
um,
that clarity moment that artists often have.
so, but then when
Was
I went
there?
to school, I went for printmaking, and I kind of
Okay.
had this crisis of like, oh my God, am I a sculptor or a printer? And then I was like, well, if I'm going for an MFA in printmaking, I want to be the best printmaker that ever happened. Like I need to
Yeah,
know everything. So I really went at it from more of like a scientific approach at first, and that's I think why I auditioned so much because I really, really was dedicated to getting good at printmaking and learning everything I possibly could.
I've always found it funny that all the artists I speak with, when they're asked about, what kind of an artist are you, or what's your medium that you use, it's only non-artists that ever seem to ask those questions. Other
Yeah.
artists don't ever seem to care. Um,
Yeah.
was there anybody that was instrumental in teaching you printmaking that really lit your fire about it?
Oh yeah, I would say, I mean, before I knew what I was doing when I was an undergrad, I had Corrine Fall and Chris Tolme were my two teachers that taught me print, and they were like mother figures to me. Like they just had such fire and like there was such fear of disappointing them that you just always tried. Like you never went to school without your homework done. And they were great. And then I would say in grad school, like how did I actually learn to print once I knew that I was doing? Malgorzata Oaks, Maggie Oaks, she came as the studio technician the same time that I entered as a graduate student. And so
Hmm.
we really learned a lot together. And she really, anything that she learned, I was right next to her. And I really learned a lot from her. I learned etching from Kate Collier.
Hmm.
Now I'm doing amazing stuff with glass, screen printing with glass and like these
Hmm.
glass books and yeah, so I would say that they were really instrumental to me. And then like Greg Page, I worked with forever. This is one of his lithographs. So once I got to Cornell, Greg Page and Elizabeth Meyer, I worked with them both and like seeing them teach and seeing their artwork and seeing the studios that they designed for themselves was really instrumental. So I think a lot about um, like having the right scenario that sets you up for the art making practice. But I also
Hmm.
have a great community at the ink shop and like Judy Behringer and Krista Wolf and Craig Maines are all working there. So it's really nice to work with people there and my students, I would say like I learned so much from my students
Oh
that
yeah, every
it's
teacher does.
the best job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of process, one of the questions I was thinking about before we started talking was uh, I'm curious to know about the process that you take, in particular, because often printmakers answer this differently than, say, painters or sculptors. I want to know about um, is your work, do you plan out your work prior to its production, or do you let the process just sort of flow and the work comes out of that? Do you do it to the nth degree, or do you
No.
let stuff happen?
I definitely feel like I am the conduit to let my work exist in the world. Like it very much is a give and take. Like I love printmaking because you're never working alone. Like the copper has its own history and memory, the stone has its own history and memory. The paper is like such a big deal in my work, and that has its own history and memory. And how did it come to even be? So I feel like very when I'm in the flow state, I feel like I am working with my matrix or with the paper to help it become what it wants to be. So I would say, like, I mean, there's definitely projects that I've done that I have an idea of what they're going to be, but they always change. Nothing has ever come out the way that I thought it was going to come out. And I'm really grateful for that.
You sound like a painter more than a printmaker. So, the other question I had for you, because we were talking about the idea that you can get work to look deteriorated or imply deterioration or whatnot. Are you ever concerned about the archival nature of your work?
I am concerned with it.
Okay.
Um, but I also feel like that's life. Like that's the life of the work. Like the first piece that I ever really sold was this piece that I called Ludum Multorum, and it's like the dirt of many, and that was the beginning of the floor mat monotypes, and
Uh-huh.
it's so fragile because it's handmade paper that is just like so thin. And then it got ran through the press with this really textured floor mat, and it's really falling apart. But then I mounted it on drywall
Uh-huh.
because it's about like construction and like building and many things adding up to make something. And I had to hand deliver that to the person that purchased it in the Bronx. And like it looks great with their stuff, but if they ever move, I don't know how that is gonna work.
So in 100 years, if you had a collection of your work and it was still deteriorating, that would be cool.
Oh, that would be really cool. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. And I also like I'm pretty rough with my work. So I always say
Uh,
like if it can't be glued back together, like it can't belong to me because it has to be pretty sturdy to live with me.
well, I'm having a lot of fun talking to you, but unfortunately, we only have time for two more questions.
Okay.
One is, so you've been making work for years
Yes.
now, and my question to you is, how do you feel your work has changed over the years?
I think that my work has changed over the years because I think that I learn more from my work than I know what to do. Like I
Okay.
think when I was young, I would, or I mean, I'm still young, but when I was first starting to make work, I would like have an idea and then I would fulfill the idea. And then it's like, okay, ta-da, like it's done. And
Hmm.
now I think it's more about discovering, like if I glue all these pieces of paper together and then I run them through the bandsaw, like what's going to happen? Like, oh my God, I have this amazing thing that happened. But what if I had a jelly slicer? So
Mm.
I think I keep learning and then sometimes I go in, like my last big solo show, I went in with this idea that like resiliency is so amazing and like the trees that go around the power lines and are just like they just keep growing. They don't care if
Hmm.
you got a hole cut in them. But then as I was making the work, I was like, I'm so sick of being resilient. Like this is so exhausting. It's so much work to do
Uh-huh.
this. So it kind of really turned from this like strength and positive thing to this like thing that would never end, and it just became this more negative thing. And so I think dealing with like the multiple sides of something rather than going in and being like, this is work about X, like
Mm.
I don't know, this work started as something about X, but now it's gone way down the rabbit hole and it's about something totally different. So
Now you sound like a scientist.
I would love to be a scientist. Yeah.
You technically you are.
Yes.
So time for just one more question. Question
Okay.
I ask all artists: what does making art do for you?
I think making art lets me be a part of a bigger cause, a bigger community, a bigger like spiritual connection with the world, like with the natural world, with other people, with the unseen forces that are shaping our world all the time. I feel like that's my connection to the unseen.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Julian, I can't thank you enough for coming by and talking with me today. Fantastic. Now I definitely have to see some of that work in person, especially
Yeah.
my favorite piece.
Amazing.
And I also want to thank everybody who stopped in to watch Art Show today. We really appreciate your support, especially if you can like and subscribe, or any comments that you have, put them down there. If I can't answer them, I'll pass them along. So please keep watching Art Show. And again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Take care, everyone.